Hello, my name's Somen.
And I'm Shaun.
So today we're going to talk about our background. And that really starts about 20 years ago, where Shaun and I built our first company, a SaaS business in safety compliance management. So long story short, we built that company over 7 years. We never raised any venture capital. And then we sold that to a strategic called Masterlock or Fortune Brands. Then soon after that, we started our second business, which is in the world of AI. So that company was called Ideal. Very similar story. It was B2B enterprise software. We built that company, and then we eventually sold that to a really great strategic. And then from there, this is where we come to the third part of the story.
Yeah, after the acquisition of the second business, we were excited to work at the acquirer, and we knew we'd be there for a few years learning some more at scale. However, we had the entrepreneurial itch. We both agreed we wanted to start another business. And how were we going to do it? We saw a business need in the world of AI compliance and governance, but we couldn't start the business. We couldn't run it. And so we worked through various networks, and we found an extremely intelligent, hungry, and mature entrepreneur to work with. And it was a wonderful connection that we made and a great experience to be able to help Guru, that entrepreneur, grow the business and see that business thrive under our guidance and his leadership.
The magic about finding the right founder, specifically with Guru, is he is good at sales. He's a smart guy. If you just look at his background, he's a PhD. He's a Stanford, Columbia, amazing background. And he's a domain expert. He worked in a great corporate job in the world of human capital management, but he was a domain expert. So his skills and experience translated perfectly in the way that we wanted to build companies on the side.
But I think Guru was looking for a way to make that jump to entrepreneurship. And it is a tricky jump to go from a corporate job that you've been used to for a decade plus. And how do you make that change and that switch to entrepreneurship? And I think that's where that magic combination of his desire, our background, our playbook that we were starting to formulate really, really came in.
Typically with people with that much experience, there comes a family, there's expenses, there's kids you got to pay for. So we think there's actually a bit of a niche in the market where you have experienced people that sometimes can't take the jump to starting their own company. We think that's a great fit. And we think this story really fits into that. And today we're going to talk about Guru and FairNow, how the company started and how it was acquired in record time in 2.5 years. Guru, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? What were you doing before you went into FairNow?
Yeah, happy to. First of all, good to see you guys.
Great to see you. It's a pleasure.
Look, I've been in the technology space for a really long time. Even going way back to my undergrad days, was doing AI, even decades ago. And then spent some time in academia and then in corporate. And it was at the time I was at Capital One, where we were starting to, really invest in AI at Capital One. But obviously AI in financial services is pretty risky, right? And so that's when we had to do a lot of governance and really risk management around AI. And so that's kind of where I started to get the idea of like, hey, what can we do from to simplify the lives of people working in this space, right? Because my teams were kind of spending a lot of tedious time working on this stuff. And so there had to be a better way of doing this. So anyways, background-wise, spent some time in academia, spent some time in corporate, and always knew, Somen, at the back of my mind, that I wanted to start a company at some point.
And Guru, you mentioned that you always knew you wanted to start a company at some point.
Yeah.
Was this, a year as long that you felt that entrepreneurial itch and you didn't quite know how to execute? How long did you think you wanted to be an entrepreneur? And what was the trigger to kind of make that
at that point, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if I even told you this, guys. So after my junior year at Stanford, I actually left Stanford to go start a company with some friends.
Yeah, you told me.
Okay, so you actually know that. So that bug was always there,
Yeah.
right? Like this notion of like building something, right, from the ground. And that experience was cool. I mean, it didn't succeed, but it was really a fun experience, a really interesting experience. And my thought was always like, I'm going to do this again later. But I wanted to kind of build certain skills before I tried it again, because I could tell we didn't know what the heck we were doing, right? And so that was kind of always on the horizon. I didn't know when it would be, but I felt like there were certain skills I wanted to build, including spending my time on the enterprise side. I actually thought that was quite helpful later on when I started FairNow, being on the enterprise side, leading large teams, and being a buyer of technology, right? I think that actually kind of helps you then when you're trying to sell to them.
So I think a common misconception is people think you have to be like a 20-year-old
Yeah,
right out
I
of
know,
school to
I know.
start a business.
I know.
I think we're coming to the realization that it's actually a lot more advantageous if you start a business later on in your career, because you know what procurement means, you know what a sales cycle means, you know it's hard to sell to large customers.
Right.
So I think that was a lot of what happened in this story, is that we kind of went from 0 to 100 really quickly.
Really quickly, especially with, I think, what all three of us, which we'll talk about later, I'm sure, but what all three of us brought to the table, I think it was a pretty powerful combination. There's actually research on this, which I think we've talked about, right? Where conditional on certain things, people who start companies in their 40s actually have better outcomes than people who start in their, now more people start companies in their 20s, but conditional on that, people in their 40s are quite successful, actually, which we happen to be. So maybe, data point of 1 there. But if I think about kind of being a successful entrepreneur, I think there's 3 things. 1 is mindsets. 2 is energy. And 3 are certain skills. You got to have a lot of energy. And that's where being 20-something helps.
Sure.
Right? You just have a lot of freaking energy, grind day after day, week after week, year after year. So that's where the 20
Less responsibilities,
all that kind of stuff. But when you think about mindset and skills, I think anyone could have the mindsets. And the skills actually, I think, are superior later on in your career.
Great history, and great to hear, the thought process leading to that jump off point to dive in and be an entrepreneur again. As you reminded me, thanks. I guess, maybe we should go from there and your interest in being an entrepreneur, and talk a little bit about how it all happened. Right? How did this really happen? Because it did take a little bit of luck. Some great connections and some great chemistry between the 3 of us. Maybe you can start and tell us a little bit. We didn't know you at all 4 years ago, right?
Right. Again, timing is everything sometimes, right? Yeah. And I was actually in 2021. So I'd been at Capital One for about 5 years, had done everything I wanted to do there. In a sense, I'd built out this function. It was a great success. And so I was trying to think about my next move. And I actually was very close to leaving in 21 to start something. And Capital One kept me back, right? They're like, hey, we're going to create a role for you. Whatever you want to do, we'll make it happen, kind of thing, right? And so I had great relationships there, and they were going to create a great role for me, and I could do whatever I wanted to do. So that's hard to walk away from.
Sure.
Within 6 months, the person I was kind of stayed for and to work with passed away very randomly and suddenly. It was actually pretty tragic. He was really young, incredibly fit. And that happened in the summer of 22, right? And it was almost like, I don't know, I'm not very religious or anything like that, but it was almost like a thing where I was like, hey, I know I wanted to go do this thing. This guy just passed away. He was really young. I got to do this now, kind of thing, right? It's who knows when the next opportunity will be, right? So it's almost like it just forced my hand. Like there was no question. And also one thing I tell people is like, entrepreneurship often is hyped as like very sexy and very cool. And it's not, right? Like for most of the time, you have to have something inside of you that says you have to do this. Otherwise, don't do it.
Right.
And I had that. I had in late 22, I was like, I'm going to do this. And there was so many voices telling me not to, including, friends and family and mentors. And they're like, why? You're leaving. I mean, you have a great life. You have a great thing going. Yeah. Why would you walk away from that kind of salary, that kind of thing, to go do something that's just starting from the ground zero? Right.
And most people never make that.
Yeah.
Right. Most people never take that.
And not only that, here's the other thing, Somen, that I realized. A lot of people, what they'll do is they'll dabble.
Yes.
They'll have side projects. And another thing I tell people is you're not going to succeed unless you you almost have to burn the bridge.
Yeah.
Because if you have a bridge back to your old life, you're not going to put in the energy, so to speak, to like catalyze this new thing that you're birthing. Right.
You have to have zero options.
You've got to have zero options.
Zero options.
You're all in. I know so many folks who are like really smart, really this and that, but then they're still got their day job, or then they're doing this on their side. And maybe that's fine from like an early prototyping kind of perspective, but at some point you got to jump all in.
Yeah.
And that's what I knew I was going to do in late 22.
Wow. Guru, first of all, such a strong personal story. Thanks for sharing. But on top of that, it really resonates to me that people do it on the side. And we talked a lot in the early days about, you may do this forever. Now, it's great to have an exit and an outcome like that, but your mindset, I think, going into starting a business, this isn't going to be over in 6 months. This isn't something you just do for 3 months.
No.
and then have a great exit, no matter what you read about in the tech blogs, right? It's hard work, but it's incredibly rewarding. And I think that mindset of this is a commitment and I'm committed and I'm not going to give up. Yeah, you pivot and you change, but I'm not going to give up.
You have to be fanatical about
Right.
that. And look, I'll also say, like, the way I approach my whole career is I've never approached it based on like, what do I think the outcome's going to be? It's all based on like, what experience do I want to have? And so that's why like I knew I wanted to have this experience, but I went in going in thinking the outcome was going to be 0. Like the median mode outcome of a startup is 0. Right? Like I don't go in thinking, okay, this is going to make, but I wanted this experience so richly. But then after that, once you're in the game, you fight like crazy.
Yeah.
Right? Like you fight like crazy.
And Guru, obviously before being an entrepreneur, you're incredibly successful. Your track record speaks for itself.
It's actually interesting, right? Like when you start a company, it's really important kind of how you go about complementing yourself, right? Because no single person has all the skills to start a company, I believe, right? And you guys, I think, are great kind of complements to each other, and you've kind of worked, have a history of how that's come together. I didn't want a co-founder per se, right? Because I wanted to, at that point in my career, I wanted to kind of run the show, right? Like that was kind of important to me. I didn't want kind of the challenges of like sharing that kind of the ownership and the decision making with someone else. It had to be mine, right? In a sense. But at the same time, I was jumping into this new. And so in the back of my mind, I was like, how do I thread this needle of like being a founder, but then like, I can't do this by myself. And what ended up happening wasn't even on my radar, right? Like I didn't know it was going to go this way. But I remember when our common friend, Pete Bergman, put us in touch, it was a kind of this very organic thing that we started chatting about. And I was like, wait a second. Like even early on, I was like, what an interesting potential relationship here. Because these guys have done this thing. They have, and one of the things I've tried to do throughout my career is surround myself with people who have subject matter expertise. And you guys had certain subject matter expertise that I did not have, right? And so I was like, yeah, this is the situation that I think I could thrive in, right? It's not a full-time co-founder, but it's like a couple of people who really can like guide me in this endeavor. And especially with starting a company, there are unknown unknowns. If they can reduce the unknown unknowns, the speed through which we can hit product market fit is just going to be different. And so these were the thoughts, and I don't know if we talked about this that fall of 22 and like, but these were the thoughts going through my mind as to why I was like, wait a second, this could be a really interesting partnership. And it obviously worked out that way.
Well, it's interesting because we didn't come to this thinking that we were going to find someone like you.
Yeah.
So Shaun and I, our business was just acquired.
Yeah.
We were with the acquiring business working, and we're like, maybe we can do this in our spare time.
Yeah.
And we clearly couldn't. I'm just talking about having to go all in. Like we clearly could not do that.
Right.
So that just, we're like, we knew we wanted to start the business, but
Yes.
this has worked out so well. Where we want to repeat this pattern where we find amazing people.
Right.
We have that expertise, grow that network of expertise, and keep doing things like this.
And I want to say, like, the thing that, like, from the beginning, like, I think it was, I still remember, we met, I think our first phone call was right around Labor Day of 22. Because I remember I'd gone somewhere on a trip, and it was right around my birthday, and it was like one of our first calls. And then we had a bunch of calls after that. And so we built our relationship. Even those first 3 months, we had some tough conversations. I remember around equity, like it wasn't even going to maybe happen, right? Kind of initially. And we had tough conversations about equity. We had tough conversations about investors,
salaries, like, everything.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so just being able to get through that and knowing, hey, we're still talking. Like we're still talking. Like I remember still Thanksgiving was when I like really made the decision. And I still remember where I was sitting, and like we were, I can't remember what the topic was, but it was a tough conversation that the three of us hopped on for. And in some ways, I actually feel some of the toughest conversations we had were in those 3 months.
Right.
Right? Even I know we had other tough ones along the way too, but like those were some really gnarly conversations early on. And so to me, the kind of the chemistry that we built then, because it's a very risky proposition. Again, what I'm leaving and what I'm doing, and then for you guys put money in, and then now that I look back on it too, and this is something we'll talk about, is like, man, how did you decide to bet on me? Right? Because at the end of the day, I didn't have that track record of entrepreneurship that you guys had. I think I brought other things to the table, but we're both betting on each other. You guys put money in it. You're bringing your investors on board who who trusted you, right? So you have a stake in this game as well. And so both sides kind of taking that leap of faith with the other side was a bit magical as well.
So we can talk about why we picked you.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I think that's an interesting story because it's like getting married.
Yeah.
There's no formula to getting married,
isn't.
right? Like
So many different
that's not a
patterns.
science.
Yeah.
That's more of an art. And I think this is actually more of an art than a science.
Absolutely.
You know, sales is a science. This picking a founder is not. It's in part. I think a couple of factors that we think experience.
Yeah.
Your experience.
Yeah.
You're clearly smart.
Yeah.
You underplay this, but you're like a PhD from Columbia and you went to Stanford. Academically smart.
Yeah.
Very smart. But I think, you know, domain expertise and I think the most important thing is the ability to do sales.
Yeah.
So it's very rare to find someone at your experience level who will grind away. We didn't actually know that in the beginning.
That's the thing.
You could
I
do
knew
good
this
sales
about
job.
myself in the sense of I knew I could grind, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't know I could do sales. And that's the thing. Like now that I'm on the other side and I'm like, if I had to bet on someone, I'm like, geez, like most people I'm like, I don't want to bet on, right? Because I don't think they understand the founder-led sales and that grinding that needs to happen.
It's hardcore. Like it's like it's a challenge.
And so that's where I'm like, man, how did they see that? Maybe you saw something and I didn't even know in that moment.
You sold us into giving you more equity than we wanted to. So like that was clearly like an indication that you can negotiate a good deal.
Right.
And you pushed back.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you were not that strong at sales, you'd be like, okay, I'll take less. And but no, you didn't. You actually got a really fair, good deal. I mean,
Yeah, certainly. And I think that that is one thing that new entrepreneurs don't fully acknowledge as being perhaps the most important part of the business is revenue growth, right? You know, without revenue, you know, the best product in the world.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of entrepreneurs that haven't done it, you have to learn the hard way.
I mean, my view is completely shifted,
Right.
right? Like I was probably more of a product guy coming into this experience. I mean, sales.
Yeah.
You gotta sell.
most like the quote that I always remember: first-time founders focus on product.
Yeah.
Second-time founders focus on distribution.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's the one thing we've always
And
talked
you guys
about.
accelerated that. That's what I mean again, like about this relationship, right? Like I was kind of a first-time founder, and I would have probably run all of the classical problems and run into all those traps. And this partnership and what you guys brought to the table just accelerated that. Like how many times I think Somen would say, like, doesn't matter, right? Like, let's go sell this thing. Right? Like all those like small, and that's where this relationship works. It's all those like, I just need those small nudges, right? And that guidance to like just skip all these pitfalls. Right. And again, when people say, how did it happen so soon? I think it's because of that partly, right? Some of it's luck, of course. And some of the decisions we made about what market to go into. And I think we picked a great market and it got hot and all that. But it was like you providing this like really good wisdom. Like you guys both in different ways provided tremendous wisdom that I internalized along the way. And I think you saw that too. Like I think I was very receptive
100%
to what you guys were saying. I think I respect you saw that I respected. And we would clash, we would debate.
You have to do.
You have to.
Yeah.
But I think that's another thing. Like I don't think any of us took any of that debate personally. It was all in this in pursuit of winning.
Yeah. Yeah. And we won together. Exciting.
So yeah, it's just the quick economics of the deal. I don't remember numbers, but it was 2.5 years. It was 50 times ARR.
Yep.
We can say that. It was a huge win. Most importantly, and truly from the bottom of my heart, like it was a huge win for you. Like I think you are now essentially financially set. You're in a different spot that you would never be able to reach working at a company, which super happy about that. We, you know, it's a great win for us. And so how has that affected you? Like, you know, what are you doing now? Are you know, did you come in a private plane? Like what did you do?
Look, first of all, you know, I'm still, I would say, still absorbing this.
Yeah.
Right? Like this, to your point, I was thinking 6-7 years, right? Like this is going to be a thing and we're going to have to, you don't think this is the outcome. You never anticipate that. And then also the way it unfolded both in the macro sense, it was faster than expected. And in the micro sense, it happened in 3 weeks.
Right.
Right? So like on both accounts, literally, I remember in mid-September still talking about a partnership and announcing that partnership at their annual conference in October. And literally from that point, it was 3 weeks. to the deal closing.
So
right?
just to give background, like you were working on a distribution deal.
Yeah.
So the magic of all startups is to have an OEM relationship with a larger company where they literally sell your products for you. So that's, we've always believed that's the key to building a business.
And those are the kinds of things, again, the wisdom, right? Like that I now have, but like you guys really pushed over and over again about how important distribution was and what are the paths to distribution and like marketplaces and OEMs and partnerships and all of that. And again, I absorbed that, right? And so invested so much in 2025 on partnerships. And this one was proceeding quite nicely, I thought. And then it flipped like this to a potential acquisition. And again, we'd had other acquisition offers, right? So by this time, I wasn't automatically thinking it was going to happen. We'd gone through almost a similar exercise a year before the date.
Yes, that's right.
And that ended up being, not working out. And in fact, my concern was more similar to the previous engagement, the acquisition not working out, and therefore the partnership also not working out.
Right.
Because I was not thinking acquisition. I was like, I just want this partnership. I just want a partnership. I just want this partnership, because that would change our trajectory as well.
Grows the business.
Absolutely.
That's the priority.
Grow the business. That's all I was focused on. So I was actually a little nervous going down the acquisition path of like, okay, what if we go down that path and like it ends up being contentious in some way, shape, or form, and that ruins our partnership possibility. So that was more my thinking going in until we got the first LOI.
Yeah.
Well, look, I think it just goes back to what we always say, right? Focus on building a solid business with wonderful fundamentals. Focus on a path to profitability or being profitable. Strong revenue growth, great product, and great people first and foremost. And I'll just speak personally for a second. The win is great. Obviously, financial benefit from an acquisition is great, but being our first time doing this, really helping and co-founding along with you, along with the CEO, watching you succeed was probably the most rewarding thing for me, truly. And so to be sitting here and talking to you, 3.5 years after we initially met, and seeing the success you've had and getting to know you as a friend is probably the most rewarding thing for.
I really appreciate that, Shaun. And look, I'll just say this to a couple of things. Like one, most people don't understand this journey.
Yes.
Right. So you can talk to family, friend, they're not going to understand it. They can be happy for you, but they're just not going to understand that day in, day out thing. So on a couple of dimensions, one, you guys have lived this, so you deeply understand it. But two, you're also there pretty much, even if not daily. Like, I don't know, for people who are listening, like we talked a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every week.
We talked every week. And then obviously sometimes more than once a week. In the beginning, obviously a lot more, and then other times, right? Like probably averaged, at least once a week. So you guys were very close to the business. You guys knew what was happening. I'm generally quite transparent, especially once there's trust. I was very transparent with you guys on both what was going well and what wasn't going well. And so I think when you go through that with someone or someones, that's kind of friends for life.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you've been through that kind of an experience, right? And that kind of, for me, a transformation too. Like I've changed since, 3.5 years ago. And, I think, one, we're friends. Two, these guys are great. I would work with you guys again. I would invest in you guys. I mean, you guys are real entrepreneurs, right? Like,
Thank you.
I think I'm okay as an entrepreneur. Like, I think I'm also good at other things, but like you guys are entrepreneurs. Like it is in your blood, in your being. I can't imagine you doing something else, though you did for a little bit, obviously, at Dayforce. No shock to me whatsoever that you're going to be doing it again. And again, in a heartbeat. I know you guys will succeed because you have the things. You have the mindset, you have the skills, and you have the energy. And I just know you guys, and I would happily work with you guys again in whatever shape or form. But like, this was a real pleasure for me too.
Well, thank you so much. I got off the phone with one of our investors today, and he was like, "This must be a world record. This must be a world record." And we're so happy that this, honestly, just like Shaun said, the change for you is what really drives us. And like, we could not have done this without your skill. Like, what you did was incredible.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you guys.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
So Guru, once again, thank you so much. We're actually having our closing dinner in about 10 minutes, so we are looking forward to that. And thanks again for everything.
Guys, again, absolute pleasure. and looking forward to closing dinner in a few minutes. But again, I look forward also to sharing this story, not just this evening, because our investors, I think, are going to hear a lot of it for the first time. I haven't told you this yet, but I'm going to have a party later on the show where I'd love for you guys to come and share this story, because I really think it's a special story, right? And this relationship and how it all worked together. I mean, this is beautiful, and I think we'll remember this for a long time.
For sure. I agree. Thanks. Wow. What a wonderful conversation we just had with Guru. And it was really fun for me to kind of reminisce and look back at how it all came together and how it came together so quickly and so great. And look, Somen and I, we're excited. We love working with entrepreneurs. We have learned a thing or two in the last 20 years of working together. And to be able to work with Guru and see him take some of those learnings and really run with it, it's just one of my favorite things to do, one of our favorite things to do. And so we want to work with more entrepreneurs. We really do see great opportunities matching entrepreneurs with our skill set and our learnings and growing great businesses.